welcome to another video. This is going to be patch preview 5.1 World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria. I'm going to be showing you some of the changes that each of the classes are going to have in the upcoming PTR, Public Test Realm build. Some of these changes might go live, some of them might not. But I'm here to show you what to expect in patch 5.1. Hope you enjoy.
Hi there, my name is Skeetz and these are the changes to Death Knights in patch 5.1. The first change we're going to be looking at is the changes to Rune Forging. Rune of Sword Breaking and Rune of Sword Shattering now reduce the duration of disarm effects by 50%, down from 60%. This is a slight nerf, increasing the time you are disarmed from 4 seconds to 5 seconds while using these Rune Forges. The second change is a rescaling of damage to Blood Boil and a damage nerf to Death Strike. Blood Boil now increases damage by 388% and attack power scaling was reduced to 11%. This was implemented to keep your Blood Boil damage at a balanced state as the game progresses. Death Strike now does 185% weapon damage. It was 280% and plus 923 damage. It was 2904. This is a significant damage nerf, though it should only affect Blood Death Knights. The third and final change is to Death Strike again. Death Strike now only heals based on the damage you have sustained from non-player sources. This change will also only affect Blood Death Knights in PvP. As Unholy and Frost, it still does and always has done the minimum 7% of your health. That's all for Death Knight changes in patch 5.1.
Hey guys, my name is Hadit and I'm here to talk about the Druid changes that may directly or indirectly affect Restoration. One of the first changes that we can notice is a drastically reduced cast time of our Symbiosis spell. It was reduced to a 2-second cast time. This change, while being minor, it helps us Druids to cast it after arenas begin in case you forget to cast it. Even I do. Even though Solar Beam's duration is being reduced for balance, this change does not affect the Symbiosis effect that you provide to Elemental or Enhancement Shamans. So don't worry about that.
Hey guys, Idaxiongmaol here. The next thing we're going to talk about in regards to Druids in the upcoming patch 5.1. Two of the other changes coming in at 5.1 is now Solar Beam only lasts for 8 seconds. And the glyph of Solar Beam has now been changed to increase the radius rather than the duration of the Solar Beam. And by increasing the radius, I think this is going to make it much more effective for Arena, RBGs and PvP in general. And lastly, a new minor glyph has been added, Glyph of Focus. This glyph reduces the radius of Starfall by 50%.
Hey, what's up guys, it's Bigmoran. I just wanted to highlight one of the class changes that's going to be affecting Druids in patch 5.1. The cast time on Symbiosis has been reduced from 6 seconds to 2 seconds. This change will allow you to easily get a Symbiosis cast off, either in the waiting room or when the gates are open. And it might open up opportunities to cast Symbiosis on a new target mid-arena match. That could be interesting.
Hey guys, Vans here. And up next, we're going to talk about the 5.1 Hunter changes and what's been changed to improve both our PvP and PvE gameplay. Up first is the Glyph of Icy Solace. It has been renamed to the Glyph of Solace and now causes both Scattershot and Freezing Trap to remove all damage over time effects. Previously, you either had to get your Ice Trap Glyph or your Scattershot Glyph to remove all overtime effects. Now, you just need one. As of 5.1, Glyph of Aim Shot has been added to the game. Your aim shot can now be used while moving. In addition to this, Aspect of the Fox has been completely removed from the game, and now your Steady Shot, Cobra Shot, and Barrage can now always be cast on the move. It seems to me that marksmanship will once again prevail, and it will once again be viable in both PvE and PvP. The explosive but deadly ability Link's Rush has been completely changed and revamped. Your pet rapidly charges from target to target and attacking 9 times over 4 seconds. Each attack causes the target to bleed for 5.3k damage over 15 seconds. This is basically a bleed. Just be wary that if there's targets near the main target you want to destroy, it will hop around and spread the bleed. So just be wary of that. The final but most important change to 5.1 is the Bestial Wrath change. Basically, your pet can be completely CC'd now when it turns into a Bestial Wrath and a Raging Monster. As you can see right here, even when it's Bestial Wrath, it can still be CC'd, but the only change is that you can still break this as a trinket, but your pet can be totally controlled while under the effect of Bestial Wrath.
Let's take a look at some of the Mage changes happening in patch 5.1. The first spell change is Ring of Frost. It is going from a 30-second cooldown to a 45-second cooldown and will have a cap of 10 units, meaning that if you try and pull more than 10 enemies into a Ring of Frost, only 10 of them will be affected, causing the others to pass over it without any effect whatsoever. The duration on Deep Freeze has been changed from a 5-second debuff to a 4-second debuff. This will cause mages to try and burst more effectively through a smaller window of opportunity. Frostbomb will now detonate after 6 seconds instead of 5 seconds, but it is also affected by spell haste. For the examples on the left and the right, I am wearing gear with haste on it, and I am not wearing any gear at all, just to show how spell haste affects the detonation timer of Frostbomb. Mage Armor now reduces the duration of all harmful magical effects by 25%, when originally it was 35%. This means that all incoming dot damage on you will be increased by an extra 10%. Blazing Speed may now be triggered after receiving damage in any amount, versus the original build which required you to receive greater than 2% of your total health, which is going to be great for mage mobility in PvP and PvE. The mana cost of Spell Steal is being increased from the original 7% of base mana to 21% of base mana. This disables the use of this ability continuously like an offensive dispel with no cooldown. Let's talk about an exciting new glyph called Discreet Magic. What Discreet Magic does is it prevents Nether Tempest, Living Bomb, Frost Bomb, Arcane Barrage and Inferno Blast to affect targets from more than 5 yards away from the primary target. This is going to be great for competitive arena because a lot of these spells have a spread effect and they cause crowd control to be broken very easily, so having this glyph will allow mages to maintain more control and allow them to keep more damage very consistent on other players. These are some of the changes coming in patch 5.1 for mages. Overall, the mage class is gaining mobility and maintaining a good level of control and damage, in a more balanced PvP situation.
Hey guys, Zybak here, and today we're going to be talking about patch 5.1 and what's going to be changing with Windwalker monks. First up, we have some spell changes. Chi Burst, Chi Torpedo, Chi Wave, Expel Harm, and Touch of Karma are now all going to do nature damage. Now, according to the game, this is already the case, but there might be an issue where it's not being classified as nature damage or something isn't working as intended. But overall, this is a good thing, because nature damage basically means more damage, because the thing with nature damage is it's not affected by armor, and most people aren't going to have very much resist towards it. So this means we're going to be doing more healing and more damage, considering some of our abilities like Expel Harm heal us based off the damage they do, which is a good change. So slight little buff right there, good to go. The next change involves the talent Ascension, and what they're doing is they're going to make that give you 15% more mana and 15% more energy regen. I'm a big fan of this because right now with Ascension, it's nice because you have extra chi to play around with, but you're losing out on raw DPS and raw healing per second. With this change, you're not going to be losing out on that so much, and you're still going to have the freedom that you have with Ascension and not feel so bad about it. So, big fan of this change. Next up, we have a change to Dampen Harm, and I'm a fan of this change. It's not really a buff or a nerf. I guess it could go both ways, but I'm leaning more towards a buff. I think 10% is probably a little bit too low. What Dampen Harm does is it will reduce the damage you take from an ability that does X amount percent of your health. And right now it's at 10%, which I think is a little bit too low because there's a good chance that just some little no-name attack's going to do 10% of your health. But with it being at 20%, I think that's going to prioritize a more dangerous spell over something that's pretty common that you wouldn't have died from anyway. I think that's a pretty good change. Next up, we have a change to Fist of Fury. Fist of Fury is now going to require melee range. Now, right off the bat, this looks like a nerf, but it's actually a lag compensation tool. What this is going to do is it's going to allow players that are lagging or have a fairly high MS to land Fist of Fury. Stance of the Fierce Tiger is getting a pretty big buff next patch. They're increasing our movement speed by 10% while we're in that stance. This is the stance that we're always in as Windwalkers all the time. This is a pretty nice change considering two of our main abilities, our Interrupt and our Paralysis, both have positional requirements. This is pretty awesome. I look forward to this change a lot. And I saved the best for last. Tiger Palm no longer stacks the Armor Ignore buff, just applies the 30% initially. I can't describe how amazing this change is. This is going to help Windwalkers out so much in PvP, it's gonna be nuts. So right now, Tiger Palm is very difficult to keep up in Arena because decent players are gonna know to fear you or CC you when that Tiger Palm is getting ready to fall off. And once you lose Tiger Palm, once you lose your stacks of Tiger Palm, it takes quite a bit of resources and quite a bit of time to get that stack back up to 3 again. And you need to keep that 3 stack of Tiger Palm up to have competitive damage. And yeah, man, one bad fear is gonna set you back a lot. Really looking forward to this next patch for Windwalkers.
And next up is the Paladin class. So what changed for Paladins? Well, two important changes are listed in the PTR patch notes for patch 5.1 that is affecting Turn Evil and Hand of Salvation. So first up, Turn Evil. Now Turn Evil is effective against aberrations. So the question is, what's aberrations? Well, essentially, aberrations are from Shadow Priests. Things like Psyfiend and Shadow Fiend are aberrations. So this is actually really big news for Ret and Holy Paladins. When you see Psyfiend casted from that Shadow Priest over there, now you're going to be able to fear it with your Turn Evil, preventing a whole bunch of crowd control on your team. Similarly, if you see a Shadow Fiend being cast from that Shadow Priest over there, you're going to be able to fear it, preventing a whole bunch of mana gains for that priest, as well as damage. So what else can Turn Evil fear now? Well, that's pretty much it for now, because Void Tendrils as well as Shadowy Apparitions don't exactly follow suit. So Turn Evil does not work on those. However, Psyfiend and Shadow Fiend are probably the most important. And for the PvEers out there, Hand of Salvation has been tremendously buffed. Now, instead of incrementally reducing your threat, it now completely removes all threat for 10 seconds on a friendly target. So if you're a DPS who just aggroed a little bit too much, now you can get a Hand of Salvation from your friendly Paladin over there, and it'll completely erase any threat you have.
Yo guys, this is Reinhardt the Russian, and I will be bringing you some interesting and awesome changes for the priest. Awesome for the most part, there are some minor nerfs to us. For Shadow Priest, one of their biggest nerfs is actually changes to PvP power. Currently, PvP power increases both your healing and damage done, regardless of your spec. So for the Shadow Priest, increase their damage and off heals at the same time. However, in 5.1 this is gonna be changed, and PvP power will either increase your healing or damage done, depending on your spec. So it's gonna increase your damage for Shadow Priest, for example, or healing for Discipline and Holy Priests. Another significant nerf was a nerf to Psyfiend. Its base health have been reduced from 104k to 37k, which is basically from 30% of priest health points down to 10%. The cast time of Psyfiend's spammable fear has been increased from 1.5 seconds per fear up to 2 seconds per fear, which is roughly one less fear over Psyfiend's duration. I think the nerf to Psyfiend talent will both make it vulnerable to lockouts and interrupts because of a longer cast time, will also make it a lot more squishy because it no longer has 104k HP, it only has 37k hit points. However, we are getting really big buff, and it's a buff to our Mass Dispel. Mass Dispel currently removes only one negative effect from the target, but now it's going to be removing all the negative effects from the targets, like I did right now here. It removed both Hunt, UA, Corruption from myself. Ironically speaking, the biggest counter to a Mass Dispel will actually be Affliction Locks and Shadow Priest themselves because of the dot protection. I really like this change. I think they took out a lot of RNG from the Mass Dispel, because currently Mass Dispel only removes one negative debuff, and it could be maybe a Frostbolt or a Deep Freeze if Mage putting you in a Deep Freeze or your ally into a Deep Freeze, or for example a Hunter's Mark and a Hunter's Trap. And I could definitely see myself using the Glyph of Mass Dispel more and more in the future when the 5.1 hits. I think all the changes combined will not gonna have a huge effect over Shadow Priest in PvP. Even though they're nerfing our off healing, the Glyph of Mass Dispel will let us get our healers out of CC way more frequently. So instead of us off healing a lot, our healer will be healing more because he's gonna be out of CC a lot more often due to the Mass Dispel buff.
Hey guys, Corbs here. So in this upcoming patch, priests have a couple minor tweaks coming their way. The first is 25% increased healing on Chakra Serenity. This is up from the 15%. You can see this change my 50k flash heal into a 65k followed by a 50k Holy Word Serenity. With this being as weak as it is, we could see some Holy Priests coming out for the time being in Arena. Next is the Psyfiend change. This changes the amount of health it has, making it die very quickly. The last change I want to talk about is the change to Mind Control, now called Dominated Mind. They took away the 30-second cooldown it had on it. This could make it pretty viable with the Psyfiend nerf.
Hey guys, Merc here, talking about the 5.1 rogue changes. First up, Seal Fate will now only be activated by melee combo point generating abilities. Now, this change I believe is put in place simply to stop Shuriken Toss from becoming a primary combo point builder, since it's so low on energy, and with Mutilate and Seal Fate, it can crit and give 2 combo points, as you're seeing on screen now. Shuriken Toss now deals double damage when used against targets further than 10 yards away, Pretty self-explanatory change, that one. Helps us do a little bit more damage while we're waiting to get in range for those pesky ranged classes. The cooldown of blind has been reduced to 90 seconds, down from 3 minutes. Now I've been following this change and I've seen that it was changed from 1 minute to 90 seconds. So they've buffed it and nerfed it, but overall it's still a really nice change and it's going to give us a lot more control. The energy cost of burst of speed talent has been reduced to 50 energy, down from 60 energy. Now, while burst of speed is a handy talent, it really just doesn't outweigh Shadow Step, and I don't think this change will make it worth picking up. Wound Poison now deals 33% more damage. While a nice change, in combination with the blind change, it's going to be much more worthwhile to take the Dirty Tricks talent for the dots through blind and keep the Deadly Poison rolling, the Rupture rolling through that blind, and use it for extra damage, especially with the reduced cooldown on blind. That's it for rogues this patch. This is Merc out.
Hi guys, I'm Jonathanlol and I play Restoration Shaman, and I want to talk about all the Shaman changes for the patch 5.1 in World of Warcraft's new game, Mist of Pandaria. There are 2 changes to the Shaman class that will greatly influence the way that it's played, and generally it won't have a very big effect on Arena. However, it will have a big effect on both RBGs and PvE. The first change affects all 3 specs, and it also affects every single other class in the game. It's the change to Heroism. The change makes it so that Heroism now increases haste rather than just a flat percentage increase. This should bring out an interesting change to the spell. And once again, this affects all 3 specs and every class in the game, because now Heroism is completely changed. The next change is one that I've been wanting to see for a very long time, and quite frankly, I'm very glad it's finally here. Unleashed Life now finally works with Healing Rain. That means that Unleashed Life is going to increase the effect of your next Healing Rain. This affects both RBGs and PvE.
Hey guys, I'm Toastmonster, and today I'm going to be talking about the Warlock changes for patch 5.1. Now, the first change we have is now the Demonic Gateway, rather than run through it, it's going to be a click to use. So as you can see here, I click it, and then it gets used, rather than here where I'm trying to run through it, and it doesn't get used. Now, I think this is a really great change. It was actually quite annoying having my teammates in arena, especially when they wouldn't quite notice it, and they just accidentally run through and be ported to the other side of the arena. But now you have to consciously use it, but it does still have the 15-second cooldown. Now, if you don't really like the click to use thing and would rather have it as a walkthrough, they have added a new minor glyph, called Glyph of Gateway Attunement, and that makes it so that when you walk through it, it will be activated rather than you clicking, but it should be noted that doesn't apply to your teammates. Now, the next big change for Gateway, you'll notice here that I'm flying extremely far away from it, and in patch 5.0 this would have made it despawned, and I'd have had to get a new one up, which is especially annoying in RBGs because it means you need to stay near it if you want to use it. But as you can see, I ran away, I came back, and it's still here, and I can still use it. You'll also notice that now it does have a nameplate, so you will be able to help see where it is in huge fights where you might not be able to see the actual gateway itself. Now, the next change I'm going to talk about is the change to Rain of Fire, and they've made it so that Rain of Fire will no longer stun targets that is hit 3 times. It will instead generate Burning Embers, and it doesn't need an Immolate to be on the target to generate a Burning Ember. As you can see here, my Burning Embers are increasing, and I don't have an Immolate on this go. And the next thing to note about Hellfire, it now ticks every 1 second rather than every 2 seconds. But the stun removal is a really good thing for the game. I know in RBGs especially when you're using the talent Manoth's Fury, which increases the radius by 500%. Destro Warlocks could actually stun an entire team of RBG people, especially with the talent Manoth's Fury increasing its radius by 500%. And if a team chose to take 2 Destro locks, it was incredibly frustrating because your cast would be interrupted and you couldn't really avoid it because there'd be so many Hellfires everywhere. Because as Destro, it doesn't need to be channeled. I think the next important change to note is the talent Kil'jaeden's Cunning, and that used to have a 50% cast time increase if you used it while casting while moving, but that's now been removed and you just instead get a moving speed decrease. I think this is great, and it means that there's actually a choice in talents now, because before people only chose Archimonde's Vengeance. And I think this means some Warlocks in PvP might stop choosing Blood Fear, because they're going to be able to cast Fears while moving at no additional penalty. Overall, this is a step in the right direction for PvP, and I think the new changes for Warlocks are a great addition to the class.
This is one of the bigger changes for Warriors in this patch. Avatar is a tier 6 talent which makes Warriors immune to movement impairing effects and increases their damage by 20% for 20 seconds. In the patch, Warriors will no longer be immune to movement impairing effects. Instead, Avatar will break roots and snares and will last for 24 seconds. And Avatar will no longer generate extra rage. Here's going to be one of the bigger changes that's going to affect Warriors in PvP. It's going to be the change to Glyph of Gag Order. Gag Order, right now, allows your Pummel and Heroic Throw to silence the target for 3 seconds. But what this was doing was it was creating too much burst and control for Warriors, and it was too hard to counter for other classes. In the patch, the Glyph of Gag Order will no longer work against PvP players. This change was made to reduce both burst and control of Warriors and allow casters to get off casts. Intimidating Shout is an ability used by Warriors to fear up to 5 targets. It is used in both PvP and PvE. It's on a 60-second cooldown. In the patch, the cooldown will be increased to 90 seconds. Vengeance is a passive warrior ability that increases attack power from damage taken. The change is to Execute. It was doing too much damage with high amounts of Vengeance stacks. Execute damage with Vengeance is now capped at the warrior's maximum health. Vengeance does not work in PvP. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the patch preview 5.1, and I want to give a shout out to everybody who participated in this video. Thank you. Could not have done it without you. As always, Swifty here. Thanks for watching.